Okay, the time is 4 o'clock in the afternoon on October 24th, 2023. I call this meeting of the Capital Improvements Committee meeting to order. Please rise with pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, hello, everyone. Our committee has a quorum for today's evening. We have Mr. Toth, Mr. Francis, myself, Justice Graves, and Cheryl Richardson, the treasurer collector here, as well as Holly Young, our ex officio member from the town administrator's office. So on our agenda, go with the library one. Let's go with the library one. All right, so first thing on our agenda is the approval of the prior meeting minutes. Does we have any included with our packet? Because I didn't see them.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I don't remember seeing them. Were
No,
they?
I didn't. I had sent them to everyone.
Okay.
They did not print them. Sorry about that.
Anyone else had a chance to look at the meeting minutes? Tim, did you say that you had seen the minutes? I have not. Okay, I didn't get a chance to see the minutes either. Does anyone have a copy of the minutes for me and Mr. Toth? Is that something?
You want to just move into the next?
Yeah, we can just do it the next meeting. That's fine. Okay, is it?
I would move that we consider that our next scheduled meeting.
Okay, does anyone want to second that? Second that, okay. So we'll move that to the next meeting. We'll take a vote. Is there any discussion first? All right, so we'll go to the vote. Mr. Toth,
Yes.
Mr. Francis. Yes. Cheryl, and I'll vote yes as well. So we will move that to the next meeting. All right, next up is our department reviews. This evening we have fire, police and dispatch, and community services. You know, first in our packet is the police department. I don't know if we'll proceed with them first. Here. All right, do you want to come up to the microphone, Mr. Fettel?
Afternoon.
How are you, Chief?
I'm well. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Okay, so our first request, annual request, which is the cruiser, you will see 64,505. All the documentation is attached to it. Last couple of years, we got on a good rotation of replacing the car every year. Highway Department last year set aside $25,000 for repair costs for our maintenance. And I believe we had just under 10,000 left out of that. So the realization of replacing these vehicles on a yearly basis is being seen. So that's the first one. Also, it's not essential that the money comes out of free cash because it's designated as the meals tax is the money that's used to replace this vehicle. So any questions on that?
Yep, that's okay.
Yes.
Considering your fleet, what is the highest mileage vehicle? I believe at the last town meeting, fall town meeting last year, the high mileage vehicle was about 120,000.
Highest mileage vehicle right now would be Cruiser 27. And that one, I believe, has 121,000 on it.
Would that be the vehicle to be replaced?
No. not with this. That's the vehicle that's gonna be replaced with the vehicle that's on the special town meeting that's coming up.
And I just always, I've asked this of you before, but is the average age of your fleet, is it down below 4 years yet?
Not yet. Not close. So this vehicle will be a hand-me-down. So this vehicle next year would replace the detective's vehicle. But what'll happen is this vehicle I will take possession of this vehicle first. My Dodge Durango, 2020 Dodge Durango will be bumped down to the detective. The detective's Ford Taurus, 2015 Ford Taurus will be the one that's taken out of rotation. That one, I believe, has 112,000 miles on it.
So it's 8 years old.
So that's how that one is gonna trickle down. Thank you. You're welcome. Any other questions? Okay. Next would be the replace and upgrade of the MDTs, which is the mobile data terminals, which go into the cruisers. The current ones we have in there now are approximately 5 years old. We're starting to have issues with them. The company that we currently utilize, which is Patrol PC, these particular units are starting to get outdated. Luckily, we're in the last year of the warranty on the units, which will expire. So that's one of the main reasons to upgrade. Also, Patrol PC got bought out. The service isn't what we had before. So the cost on those would be $32,300. Again, this would not be coming technically out of free cash. However, the expense is over $10,000, so I have to bring it before the board. This will be utilized out of 911 funds to replace those terminals. Questions on? Those?
Question. Mr. Toe. Cheryl. Right, pretty straightforward. I have no questions on that.
Okay. Last but not least, the ballistic shield. Since we've, if you remember. Remember about 3 years ago, we were able to purchase our own paintball system for training, for firearms training. Over the last 2 years of doing the training of the Fernal School, there is a realization that going into the school or anywhere that we're gonna have to engage in an active shooter, somebody's gonna get shot. And right now, it's just paintballs. And trust me, they do hurt. They can draw blood. So the guys were concerned and they asked for a ballistic shield. It's only $1,800. It's a single person shield that would be for the lead of the team. And anybody that wants to see this in real life, how you engage an active shooter, it is quite eye-opening if you've never had to do this. So I would ask that this be a priority for us at the $1,800 for the shield. And that's all the requests I have.
How often do you do this?
We do active shooter training once a year. Do firearms, full firearms training once a year, the active shooter training once a year.
Keith, is one enough to get the job done, or should you have more?
Uh,
Based on the size of an entry team?
So basically, I mean, a backup would be nice. Okay, however, being realistic, there's only, during the day, there's only 3 officers around, myself and 2 other patrolmen. Being that we're gonna need more to get a team into the building, because basically now what we're trained to do is first man on scene is going in. So it doesn't matter whether or not it's gonna be a single man entering the building or if it's gonna be a full 4-man team. Also, Chief Dickey can attest that it's also changing how we respond to active shooter incidents, where it's gonna be more of a collaborative entry, where we're gonna go in and we're gonna assess, but if we don't hear gunshots, we are going to evacuate the injured. So we will be bringing in paramedics behind us. So that's also another reason for the ballistic shield, for their protection when they come into the building. Because we're gonna bring them in, they're gonna take out the injured. And then when we hear gunshots, unfortunately, we're gonna go to the gunshots and we're gonna leave them with the injured. So it's twofold. It's not only our safety, but it's also gonna be the rescue safety behind us. It's a new format coming up. So.
Familiar with it, I teach it, and I'm
Asher.
familiar with the Ashers. That's why I'm asking, is one enough? It sounds like
It's-
2 would be,
2 would be
Optimal.
better.
Yep.
2 would definitely be better, because then we could always, if we have a team that's gotta go to the gunshots, if we had 2, we could always leave 1 behind for the paramedics behind us. 2 would be better.
Yeah.
I mean, because honestly, down
an FPA 4300 chief.
next year, like, my request next year is, we're on a 5-year rotation for our vests. And next year, the full-timers vests are gonna be coming up. So we're gonna need our vest replaced next year. But with this new Asher program coming in for the active shooter training, I'm almost positive that the chief is either gonna need his own bulletproof vest or an additional shield just for his person.
We do already currently have ballistic gear on both ambulances. It is generic stuff, so it's nothing we've had fitted for our responders, and all that can change in the future.
It's better than nothing.
Yeah, it's basically better than nothing stuff we have right now. It's generic sizing, so for me, it may take up quite a bit of space, but for some of my guys, it may take up very little space. That's all stuff that's changing in the future.
Sadly, it's not a one size fits most.
Definitely not. No. And we could always give our hand-me-downs to them, but then you're going past the life expectancy that the federal government observes, because theirs is 5 years. And it's 5 years because of the breakdown of the material that makes up the vest. Other-
You have a question? Yeah.
Yes,
This is a little bit related but unrelated. I'm very concerned about the, I know that there are good protocols in place for all the public schools, but I'm also personally very concerned about about the doors at the regional, particularly what is now used in middle school. I think the doors are probably 50 or 60 years old. They're not the same as the doors at the elementary school. And I just wanted to ask you, because I actually thought about bringing a warrant article, 4 doors.
Mhm.
And I just wanted to ask you what your thoughts are on that.
so I know that Superintendent Casavant put together a grant, I believe awarding a grant for security updates at the school. I don't exactly know how far along those are at this point, because that's their deal.
Well, I can tell you, I did talk to Superintendent Casavant
Yep.
about that issue, and he said that his next goal would be to create a track in the middle school, between the you know, right now you can just go through the 2 sets of doors and go right in.
Yeah.
Once the outer door is unlocked. With a trap, you would be, you could be let in, but then you'd have to be let in again, so anybody who might be a dangerous person could potentially be trapped.
Yep.
Or they could, to see, and, he said that is probably his priority item. I mean, were your thoughts be kind of the same about that, for the trap help?
So currently at the two schools, they do have double door entry.
Right,
So the first door is electronically locked, the second door is not. I believe that part of the grant they were going for was the electronic locks for the second door,
right.
and then
True trap,
a true trap, and then they would also have the camera on the second door so that they could see who's actually getting in. But that's, I mean, we discuss this all the time. That's his budget versus my request. That's two different things. I can tell him what I would like in the building, but that's not really what I can enforce.
what do you think? What do you think? And, this is kind of a back of the envelope question. If you don't know it, you don't know it, but what do you think it would cost to bring the doors or, anything else, within the middle high school up to standards and say the new Gardner Elementary School or the new Templeton Center Elementary School, which I understand are state of the art.
I
I can tell you what I think the figure is. I think it's between $1 and $1.5 billion. But that, again, that's a back of the envelope.
I'm not thinking it's that high of a number. Basically, it's the locking mechanisms. It's not the door. The doors are steel doors there now. A lot of the doors, except on the inside, they're the wood doors on the two where it comes down from the middle school to the high school. You've got the wood doors that block it off there, which are also electronically locked. Or can be. I can tell you that their video system that they have now is state of the art. In the high school.
Yeah.
Which we have access to.
No, I understand that piece is very good. But it just seems to me that, that perhaps the classroom doors, particularly in the middle school, if they're 50 or 60 years old, maybe they'll be a lot of standards. That was kind of my thinking. Figure was it could very well be a little.
It could be, but I'm not thinking it's over $1 million to do the doors. I mean, I'd have to walk through the doors and see how they all line up on it. We're getting away from a lot of the old training we used to do used to be shelter in place, lockdown. A lot of that is going away. It's flee the noise, get away as far as possible, resist if you can. It's all changing from the incidents that have happened. So that is Mr. Tothgate. Expound.
It's dynamic right now.
Yeah, it's totally changing from what we're used to.
It's just, it's an issue that really is great personal concern.
Yep.
Thank you.
Cool.
Yes, I just may touch on that. Are you talking like the classroom doors? So I've actually been in communication with Chief School Resource Officer lately about this, some different ideas. He was looking at temporary fixes. There actually is some products out there, one that I'm a little more aware of. It's called teachers. Back at the office, it was actually a lock designed for the active shooter situation that can be, any door can be modified for. It meets ADA and building code standards for being able, if you're in the classroom, to be able to get out of the classroom. But when it's, the lock is, when that lock is engaged, that room is locked from the outside in, so you won't get in. And it gives accessibility where we can have fire, first responder keys, like the Knox box and so forth. So as a first responder, police officer making entry, or fire department, after the police department, whatnot, we can have keys to be able to access those rooms where the intruder cannot. The one I'm talking about, like I said, is ADA compliant. There are a few other ones on the market that are not, and it can be built right into the doors we have now. You're not talking about buying. Those costs do come down. It was actually something that I'm gonna be meeting the school resource officer Thursday afternoon. I was gonna talk to him about if he can bring it to either Mike or the superintendent, or wherever it's gonna go for future.
No, I just look at that as potentially money well spent. Thank you.
Anyone have any questions? All right, well, thank you, Chief Bennett. Well,
Thank you.
Have a good afternoon.
You too.
thanks. Up next in our packet is fire and EMS. Chief Dickey, if you'd like to come up.
Afternoon all. I don't know if you have a certain order you want to go in.
I don't know if this particular order that you want to present to the chief. Other way is fine with,
I guess I can talk briefly first about probably what's gonna be the easiest discussion with the new ambulance. So our current new ambulance of R2 was just recently paid off this fiscal year. It's a 2020. One before that is a 2016. So the request in front of you would be to replace the 2016 ambulance. The costs have gone up greatly since 2020. Current estimate I have on this project is $430,558, which is over $100,000 increase in the last 10 years. I would be looking not to take this out of free cash or taxation, but out of my ambulance reserve receipt. There are multiple ways to do that. I can look at either just an outright purchase of it because there is enough money in the account, or to try to save some of that money and gain a little bit of interest for future years and do a multi-year lease on it. The 2016 that we have right now, the scene, I don't have the figures on costs, still working that out with my maintenance people, but we've been seeing quite a bit of time in and out of the service shop lately. Nothing for major repairs. It's all been for smaller things, but things that's gonna go back into the shop floor, like doors not quite opening right, getting fixed. We had our last state annual inspection, the step ups that go into the driver's door and passenger door got written up by the state for a little bit of rust. They had to be replaced. And it is, as it is a 2016, it does split its time with our 2020 ambulance. But the lead time on this truck is 2 years from now, unless I happen to find a demo model from a company that will be available soon. But right now, I have not been able to find that.
Chief, what's next?
All right, so the next one will be a new chief command vehicle for me, but this is, like Chief Bennett just discussed with moving his down to his detective position. Right now, the vehicle I'm looking to replace, we got from the highway department, about a year and a half ago. The one from the highway department is currently has 273,000 miles on it. It burns oil. We have a quarter panel that we just basically screwed back in. Is a inexpensive fix, but if it's gonna still be a long-term vehicle to us, we need some more attention. We have a on again and off again check engine light that seems to just keep coming up on us on that vehicle. I do have it currently waiting to go be checked out for that check engine light again. And actually, while they have it, they were gonna do a full vehicle inspection, with that mileage on it. I want to make sure the frame is good and everything, and I don't have that yet because it hasn't made it to the shop for that. So my recommendation would be to take my SUV that I have, which is a 2019 with only 37,000 miles, I believe, to replace that vehicle, as a 19, 5 years old. And then to do a new SUV for myself. Right now, the quotes I got were much higher than Chief Bennett's for a cruiser, so he's gonna get me his quote, and I want to see what the differences are. The first one I looked at was a hybrid vehicle at just over 91,000. Have not got a chance yet to talk to, I think it's Lori, that is in charge of the green communities, if there was any money for a hybrid, from green communities, maybe to help out with the hybrid. The cost for the hybrid compared to just a straight gas is only about $3,000. We don't have a lot of maintenance cost on the vehicle that we're looking to get rid of. It's used probably steadily once a week for inspections, residential inspections, commercial inspections. And it goes out of town for training, to take our people back and forth to the fire academy and things like that. So it's not that it's a high use vehicle, but at 273,000 miles, it's time to be retired with the current things happening with it.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay.
Next, sticking with vehicles, forestry truck. So this has been on capital for a few years running. Currently, our forestry fleet is dwindling. We have a 1978 Chevy pickup truck that's homemade into a forestry truck many years ago. That's what I'm looking to replace. The only other truck we have working right now is a 1987 or 86, I can't remember the year, top of my head, military truck. Those are our two forestry vehicles. Last year, our third forestry vehicle, which was a tanker, went out of service with a engine that was getting ready to blow at any second and not worth the money that was quoted to fix it. That truck is quasi being replaced by the tanker truck that was purchased. We just finished with last year's capital budget, because that tanker truck was a four-wheel drive frame, won't go everywhere the military tanker went, or go most places. So, but really looking, the 1978, like I said, is a homemade forestry truck. It's getting more and more difficult to find parts for this vehicle when it needs to go out for repair. It does not meet any of our NFPA suggestions for a fire apparatus. And actually, don't ask me how this happened, but the price has come down from last year. by a few grand. So I got the news quote right now at 175, just over 175,000. Last year I budgeted 180. There is also the truck I'm looking to get rid of, the 1978. There is some value in that, not as a trade-in vehicle, but actually if we were to sell it outright from the town, the truck is an antique. And I've seen a few on Facebook Marketplace in worse shape for trying to be sold for about $10,000 to $12,000 right now. So there is the ability to try to sell that afterwards as a private sale from the town and recoup a little bit of money.
Questions?
Yeah, through the chair. Chief, I remember when Senator Goby helped us get what you're calling a cartoon utility vehicle. There was some discussion on putting a skid unit into that as a forestry type. Is that still on the table or?
That could be a use for it. Not saying it's the best use, putting a skid unit in that. It would take away from the ability to use it as a utility truck we need. That's the only pickup truck we have to hump hose and equipment around for our trainings or after fires at this point in time. But if it's absolutely needed, if something happened to one of our vehicles and we really needed to do something, it could be done, yes.
Thank you for that.
Mr. Francis? You're all set? Right. All set. All right, I don't have any questions, so Chief. What is your next request?
So the next one, this is kind of just a placeholder. It's again, a vehicle, new fire truck. I currently have a 1999 fire engine in for service. I've been without it now for about 6 weeks. It went in to have the engine oil, have the engine service, the chassis service, have NFPA inspection done of it. And the company we used actually picks up the truck, brings it to their shop, delivers it back. That saves me personnel, so I don't have to have it taken someplace and so forth, leaving myself short staffed. On the way back from being serviced, it developed leaks where they had to have it towed back to their facility, inspected. They fixed a fuel leak on it, and it is awaiting to go into an engine repair shop to find out how bad the oil leak is and where it's coming from. There's troubles we were not having with it before. I don't know how they came about, but where it came about shortly just before capital was, in case this vehicle needed to be replaced in the near future. I wanted to make sure to bring it here so no one can say I did not bring it to capital. So I do not know. I was expecting an email before I came to you today with more updates. And they did not get it to me today. But again, this truck is a 1999. It is old. It does not get a lot of use because unlike the police department, our vehicles are not on the road every day. So the mileage is not there, gets serviced every year as it should. But it's the little things that are going wrong with it. So right now, there is an avenue of a demo truck that I found that would be $750,000 right now. The new truck that we bought in 2019 was 425,000-ish. So the cost that these engines have gone up is dramatic. if we waited to order one, that 750,000 from my dealer has already gone up to 800,000 just to order it, and they're 2 years out. So. Like I said, right now, I don't know the status of that engine that is in for repair. They could not answer me anything that has not made it to the engine shop yet.
Yeah. What would you consider the useful life for your department on a fire engine? You bought it new today.
NFPA states fire engine should last you 20 years and then be able to go 5 years after that in reserve mode.
So this is 4 years past what we should be
Yes,
using it.
yes.
But it's still,
And this engine was not purchased by the town. This engine was purchased by, the past chief got a bunch of, businesses in Templeton, Gardner area to donate money, and they bought it for its use. So after this, the next vehicle would actually, the next oldest vehicle would be, engine would be a 2003, so that's still 20 years old. And then you go up to the newest one in the 2019. Our ladder truck is a 2006, which is 17 years old. So unfortunately, right now, even though the town has done a fantastic job at starting to regain our capital needs over the past 5 or 6 years, our stuff is unfortunately so expensive, as we know, compared to buying a cruiser or a pickup truck or something that it's hard to recover from. So,
Mr. Chair, if I may. Chief, correct me if I'm wrong. Unlike a DPW vehicle that gets exercised, loaded up, put sand, put salt, all gravel, whatever, exercise the suspension, et cetera, et cetera. Fire trucks don't have that luxury. We back them in the door, we load them up full of equipment, we fill the water tanks, and that's how they sit. Until used, then everything gets put right back on, and those poor trucks are laden down their entire life. Is that a true statement?
that's correct. Their equipment is on.
Yep.
Every day of their life. They get out. So if we don't have a fire or something to really get them out with, they come out of the station once a week. Everything gets tested and inspected, and it gets driven and get put right back in. So.
They tend to be low mileage, but they have a hard life.
A lot of hours from when they're used, you know. If you look at our last major fire, the Red Onion, our trucks and all the community's trucks around us that were there were being run at high RPM for multiple hours, 4 or 5 hours. High RPM to pump the water. We were pumping in excess of over 3,000 gallons a minute for probably about 4 hours with that fire. So.
Thank you, Chief.
I have a comment.
Yep.
Last year, I was just looking through your request from last year, and you had a $225,000 request to replace Forest Sioux Creek tanker. It was on the list.
Yep.
Did that request dropped? Or
So that,
I'm just a little bit confused.
so I didn't bring that request forward this year. We have last year's capital, besides that forestry truck, we also requested a new tanker truck to replace the tanker that's 1980. When that was spec'd out, the new tanker was spec'd out as 4-wheel drive tanker. So it would have the ability to go off the road, just like that $225,000 forestry tanker did. The difference being the forestry tanker holds 1,000 gallons of water. Our new tanker that is in the pipeline now is 2,000 gallons. It won't be able to go as many places off the road. You'll have to have hard packed dirt roads to do it. But it's going to replace both. So you will not see the 1,000-gallon forestry tanker back on the capital, because when the new tanker gets here in 2 years, that's going to replace both those trucks.
And I did have one additional question. There was also a request last year for $100,000 for a fire station study. That's something that you would still like to have the channel administrator and select board.
I'll be
pursue.
touching on that in the next presentation.
More questions? Okay, so we'll move on to your next item sheet.
So my next item is building improvements, fire station remodel of our fire headquarters in Baldwinville. Mr. Francis stated, last year I asked for $100,000 for a independent study to see what we should have, what our town needs and so forth. And it was passed over. For many years, I've tried to bring improvements to the fire station, starting with security upgrades, and they've been denied for whatever reason. I asked for $30,000 2 years in a row for security updates. I asked for $30,000 to update the living areas, kitchen area, break room area, bathroom areas up there in the second floor. Was denied. Actually started making security improvements on my own through my budget with from some different locks, from actually meant for Airbnbs, but they're fingerprints, separate ID code numbers and everything like that. They're not just the single lock 4-pin number that everybody knows the same number for. I now can control it much better, trying to make improvements on my own. This year, thinking that $100,000 wasn't going to fly again, I brought a little cheaper of a model in to try to make some improvements to the first floor, to make us, it would help with the ADA compliance, to update floors that are probably, the carpets are more than likely from the 70s or 80s, get a fresh coat of paint over the paneling in there, make improvements to our counter where taxpayers come into, and make that ADA compliant for them, in a workstation for my admin to remove a desk out of the area to gain a little bit more space in the office, to make some minor electrical updates for that work area and some outlets for in the crew room, so forth. So I try different ways every year. The correct way would be to do the study and to see where we are.
Anyone have any questions or?
Just a comment, Chief, I appreciate you being frugal and coming up with ways to work through this and chip away at it. But yeah, there's, I have to agree with you, there are some things that need to be done.
Thank you.
I would agree with you.
It's not my first priority for what needs to be done there. My first priority would be to find a way that my firefighters don't sleep on a second floor. I have to go down 2 flights of stairs through the basement and go through one building outside to another building to get the apparatus that they need to go and go on emergency calls. But anything to change that would take us into a full compliant building, and we might as well do the study anyways.
Any additional comments or questions? Chief,
One more.
one more.
We can keep going all night if you want. So at last year's budget review, it got brought up that my turnout gear, my PPE should have come through capital planning because it was over $10,000. Apologize for that last year. The way I was taught in the past by the past town administrator, that didn't need to come through capital planning, because the individual item purchased was for less than $10,000. But so in the estimates that came out late, I do have a breakdown sheet of all the gear. So the price you're gonna see for this. The 28,970 is only for the top item. It is for the coat and pants there. $2,897.55 each for the set. A budget for 10 sets of gear. That is does not mean that we replace 10 sets of gear every year. That means that if somebody ruins a set of gear and we need to buy a set, I have the money to do it. That means if I get a new employee that does not fit into compliant gear, I have the money to buy them gear. It means that by NFPA recommendations, my people should have 2 sets of gear. So I've worked very hard in my tenure as chief to get it to a point where we didn't have to buy each person 2 sets of gear at one time, where they expire at one time. We actually have a good model going right now where everyone's gear is about 5 years apart. So we're replacing gear for everybody approximately every 5 years. Doesn't always work when I get someone brand new come in, but we do the best we can. The other items you see on that list do not entail anywhere near the amount needed, but that's the same thing. That's the rest of the gear. It's gloves for when something gets ripped. It's boots when they get torn. A new helmet if it gets broken or out of date. A hood when they get torn or ruined, at a fire or just can't be used anymore. So this here is just, like I said, this will be in my regular operating budget, but I was told it should really come from capital because of the amount. So, I apologize for the last mistake, if you look at it and even just go per firefighter and add everything else, I'm only at, not even $4,000 per firefighter. So they go to individual people, not as one purchase.
Comments or questions? Okay, well, thank you, Chief Dickey.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next on our agenda for department reviews is community services. We'll start with Jackie. Hello, Jackie.
Hi, Justice and committee. So I've submitted 3 requests for capital funding, all of which pertain to the senior center. I'd like to thank Bob Sozik for assisting me with the estimates for the transit utility van with the mobile lift and for the carport type shelter, which are the 2 estimates you have in front of you. We'll do the van first. At the moment, and for the recent past, we have received a vehicle that has a mobility lift from MART as they redline their fleet. So we've basically received vehicles that they chose to upgrade. These are vehicles with a lot of miles on them, and not, I mean, they're sound, they're road okay, but the current one that we have has been in the mechanic shop quite a bit in its lifetime with Templeton. And it is due to be inspected next spring. Bob has let me know that it is very unlikely to pass inspection. And that, if there's another major repair needed prior to inspection, it's probably not something that makes sense to move forward with. So, and that is our only van with the mobility lift at the moment. As on a side note, we have a vehicle, we have a Scion that was gifted to us by the Friends of the Templeton Elders many years ago. That vehicle, while it doesn't have the mobility lift, so it's kind of apples and oranges, but that vehicle is also probably going to be redlined before next year. That is, we had used it for longer trips because it's more fuel efficient. But it's really only a 3-passenger vehicle. It's definitely served us well.
Yeah.
But again, it's not something that's likely to pass inspection, and it's definitely not something that Bob feels is prudent to put more money into repairing. So, so by next spring, we could potentially be down 2 vehicles. One is the transit van and the other is just a car. So that's the request for the van.
Does anyone have any questions or comments?
How often do you have to use that, the wheelchair or something?
So we probably are averaging 4 wheelchair rides per month. But someone that really can't step up into a van might need that lift as well. And it's our transportation numbers are really up there.
Yeah.
So there's really no predicting whether that need for mobility lift is gonna increase or not. I suspect it will at least stay the same, if not increase slightly.
Are you making trips to Worcester?
I don't
The
believe
trips, or is
so.
it just within the greater Gardner?
Yeah. In fact, we've really had to think about really limiting the use of the current mobility van, because it's not in good shape. So I think the furthest we go with that vehicle is Fitchburg to the dialysis center.
No, DeVita
I'm sorry.
dialysis.
Yes. Most of our rides are local,
Anyone else have any more comments or questions? Okay,
Okay.
all right, Jeff.
The next one was for the, I think Polly maybe got that to you late. Sorry about that. I received this from Bob a few days ago. So the vehicles at the senior center are all parked in the rear of the building. There is no shelter for them. So our drivers are exclusively at the moment, and have been recent memory, retired folks, retired gentlemen at the moment. And when it snows, they not only have to shovel the vehicles out, but for the larger vans, they have to drive them over to an outside walkway and use a giant snow removal device to clear the roof from the snow, because that's the law. So it's a lot to ask for these folks. One of our drivers last winter asked his couple of his grandsons to come and help him after every storm, because it's a lot to ask a retired person. So this would be like a sort of a carport shelter, not completely enclosed, but it would be, anchored to the ground so that it's safe and compliant. And it would, maybe make it a little easier for the drivers to get those vehicles cleared off after a storm.
Does it have any sides, Jackie, or is it like a car?
I think it's a carport.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought there was gonna be a picture, but the picture that Bob showed me a couple of weeks ago is just what you said, a carport with the sides to it. So there'd still be a little shoveling, I imagine, but that
I have that home. It's not really that bad.
not
Yeah.
too bad. It's not.
Depends on which way the wind blows.
And that is something that, would be an allowable expense through our senior formula grant. So that's something to keep in mind. We have a pretty decent balance in that grant fund. We use that to pay the salaries of one of our assistants over there, but if your board, forgoes funding it, I think that it's something we would probably still try to move forward with using those funds.
Does anyone have any more questions or comments?
I do.
No.
I just have one comment. I think, especially with the current job market, we're thankful for the drivers we have. And if it was a little bit easier, I mean, it's one thing to drive, it's another thing to be clearing off these huge vehicles. So that's just another point to kind of
Right.
put this forward.
Hearing no other questions, you have one more.
Yes, the last one I had is, I believe Adam said it was already on your radar,
Mhm.
is the senior center kitchen project. We have been in talks with the Friends of the Templeton Elders who had some monies that they fundraised for the kitchen. And we're hoping that one of their representatives will attend the November's Council on Aging meeting so that we can get an idea of exactly how much money they can commit to that project. Short of that, I don't know. We haven't submitted an ARPA request. We have looked into a couple of grants. Nothing that, the grants that we've looked into sponsored by the Mass Council on Aging. The funds need to be expended by July 1st, which that's not likely to happen. Doesn't seem wise to purchase kitchen equipment and have it stored in the basement for maybe up to 2 years before it can be installed. Warranties expire and things could get damaged. So it's sort of, we're trying to figure out what funding sources we might be able to look into. But as long as it's on your radar, then I feel like we can move forward with some other options.
I have any questions?
No, I didn't.
Okay,
Well,
well, thank you, Jackie.
Thank you.
Got my friend Steve here.
Hi, Steve, how are you doing?
Hi, Justice. Self, I made it.
Okay.
Well, as you know, just some notes, we use our retained earnings as an enterprise fund for our capital account, which is in the 5,700 account as it's known. And so every year we put our retained earnings in that and draw capital from there, and all of our equipment is considered capital items. We should have for FY 25, I believe there was about 104,000 left over in retained earnings. So we will try to budget as much of that as possible. And we normally do not use near as much as we budgeted. We budget for just to keep ourselves flexible. So we can purchase things as we need them and don't have to go to town meeting to request additional funding for those. So you often see in our capital plan a 3 to 5 year plan. This is all the equipment we may need in the next few years. And, I'm comfortable with the town administrator assigning a lump sum disallowed to it so that, okay, we have to get within this budget this year, even though more is on the list, if you know what I mean. It's like a buffet table, but you get one plate. Is probably a poor way to describe it. So I'll start with the first priority would be Scout Hall security and furnishings. As I'm told, the project should be done within the next year. So they have one more round of construction and then electrical, and we're planning on being in there. So we're still trying to get in there to figure out security. We don't know what that would consist of, but certainly surveillance cameras, and that could be something as simple as calling our friendly cable operator and saying, hey, you sell this stuff, go to town. But we also have a gentleman on our cable committee who does card access security for a nonprofit locally. And he should be able to help us with that. So we may get card access for Scout Hall. And we've always said that we would put some skin in the game since 2015 and purchase furnishings for Scout Hall. So we'll do that as well. And we will need cabinetry ourselves, that we can match the cabinetry, whatever they put in for the kitchen cabinets. We're gonna need a couple of big lockers for things like tripods and cameras and video cards that we can allow. And as some of you know, we don't have much storage. So that's the Scout Hall, and that would be the top priority, expecting that in FY25. I think we have 10,000 budgeted this year for it as well, if something happens earlier. And we have a lot in capital that we can use as kind of a bucket if we want to expand that. That's priority one.
Does anyone have any questions for Steve?
Yep.
Oh,
I do not.
no, you don't. All right. You can go ahead now.
I'm just curious as to where the status of the legislation that we've been held for kind of tax streaming services, because as we've discussed, the number of cable subscribers is going down, and the number of people using streaming services is going up, and it affects your revenue. Do you think that you're going to need to go to the town meeting floor for funding sometime in the next 3 to 5 years?
I think it's a strong possibility because I don't think that streaming bill's going anywhere. And I'm curious as to where it is as well. And I don't expect it for, I can't expect it for FY25. I don't think they'll have it done for June 24 because they're just starting to look at it and they need to figure out what numbers are real and what isn't real and how they're going to split it and what the revenues are. They have no idea. From the hearings, you can tell that they're just taking this on. So that doesn't bode well for the end of this legislative session. I would expect them to try to get something together for the April 1st deadline when the hybrid meeting options are scheduled to expire. And they keep renewing that, but I know the State House seems to want to do something permanent with that, to make the hybrid meeting options, and you can have a quorum both in the room and electronically. And I think they want to tack something onto that if they can. But again, that's April 25. And, we're voting this the next budget cycle. So, and, we can look at the way the subscribers are going down, and if that continues, what we have 2.5 years left. So, yeah, I expect to have to make a request for the town, and we are making a request for 200,000 in ARPA funds for operational, which I can touch upon a little bit as well. And that was per the recommendation of the town administrator. And I consider that a Band-Aid for 2 or 3 years. So in the meantime, we're trying to build a media business so that we can sustain our finances. And that's not an easy task in this day and age. So to answer your question, yes, I'm curious about it too, but I don't expect it. And I think there's a very strong lobby against it, and they're hearing it. So. Like me to move? I'm sorry.
I was just gonna ask if there's any more questions or comments.
Priority 1A, we put this on every year and we try to make most of our sort of regular equipment purchases. As you can imagine, we have a wide variety of them. And we put in for 15,000 every year. And I gave you a separate sheet that I don't know if you have it in your packet, that outlines a lot of the things that we would put in that $15,000 or $20,000 bucket per year. including, if we need to upgrade audio in this room, and I won't go down the whole list, but it's only several feet of paper. And fortunately, most of those projects came out to $8,000 or $9,000, so I didn't have to put them on capital. And that isn't by design. I'm convinced I have a guardian angel who kept me from filling out forms and for me to bother you with them. So that's where that comes from. And if you have any questions about that or any of the things on that separate list, if you have.
Questions or comments?
The only other question I had is I noticed one of the possible revenue sources is the Lions Club.
Or, yeah, Scout Hall Lions Club, and we have always talked since the Scout Hall, the original Scout Hall committee was formed to go in on like a video gaming system for, a sitting area with an entertainment area. And I know that, every year we have a good relationship with them, and every year with their golf tournament, they do some fundraising. So maybe we'll have a better relationship with them. I do not know. Thank you. You're welcome.
Any other questions or? No? Okay, Steve, you want to keep going?
Priority 2 would be a mobile 3-camera production switcher. This has been on our capital improvements list numerous times in the past. If you were to go to Athol Orange TV, AOTV, or Fitchburg Access Television, they would have a big 3-camera system. If you want to do a talk show, it's good to use 3 cameras. And the middle one is wide, and the 2 on the sides are pointing at people. And you get a production switcher that can actually switch the cameras and record that live. What we do right now is we record numerous tracks, for instance, of our TV news show, 4 tracks, and then we do it in post-production, and we sync up everything. So, if a news station is live switching everything, even if it's just recording it and playing it later. And a lot of these, virtually every TV station in the studio is going to have a big 3-camera production system, or even more cameras, and put it in a side room. But there are also mobile ones, and they're becoming commoditized. Thank goodness. They used to run 10 to 15,000. You can get pieces for a few $100 now. I mean, I don't know how good they are. I have to use them and see. So hopefully, we get something and we save a whole bunch of money that we can use elsewhere. But I feel like I have to put this in there in case we decide, okay, we need this kind of production switcher, and it has to be able to move in and out of a closet, or be able to move to a remote location and set up a shoot. So that would make us a lot more professional. And I think, especially if we want to do video production services and make money on sponsorships, we're going to need something like that. If we don't have it by the end of FY25, we are behind schedule. Because we should probably be using some of that right now.
Would have any questions or comments?
The last 2, I'm not sure if I need to put these on there, but I thought I should anyways. The emergency fund for station relocation, and a possible fiber encoder. And there are 2 issues playing here. First of all, is that our station location presently is in the floodplain of a dam that we have decided that we consider unsafe. So Depot Pond can break, and we're floating downstream. So we may need to move that. I have calls into our cable provider to ask for quotes on relocating that. They don't like to do it, number one. And it's a upstream channel for them. It could cost a lot of money. I would consider it $20,000 I would not flinch at $20,000 on that price tag. But I don't know if we should move it actually, or if it could be moved. We've talked about the emergency maintenance, the emergency management building. They have to get their electrical in line first with their CPC project, and that's, you know, at least a couple of years, or a year or two off from what I understand. So that's one issue that's going on with that. And the second issue is, the past 2 years, we have had to have the cable provider replace the fiber transmitter just so we can get the signal out. They keep expiring, for lack of a better word, and used ones are dug out of the closet to replace them. So I wouldn't be surprised if I see my new friend from Comcast again this November, replacing another fiber transmitter. Or what I understand the cable company Comcast likes to do is have you buy a fiber encoder at a price of about $40,000. And I think they want to push it to the contract negotiations for a new contract in 27, which we should start talking about in a year or two. And make you own it. Feels like the utility, they now only want to own up to the entry point. They don't want to own something in the rack and have to replace it like they have to do with these fiber transmitters. So that could be a big expense. Part of me would prefer to get it done now, so then we can ask more in the contract time, if it's worth it, if there's still cable then, I don't know. I don't know what the contract would be worth, but I intend to keep 50 to 60,000 in reserve and capital if we can, if we need to spend it. I didn't know if I needed to fill out a form for that, but I did.
Questions for Steve? Tim?
Just one quick comment, since it seems to be they bring in used equipment to swap. Do we have any idea how much used equipment is still available? Or at what point, if we're gonna reach the end point and they're gonna hold us to buying that new $40,000 item?
I don't know, Tim, that's a good question. Every time this comes up, I imagine this poor guy running back to the office and searching through a crowded closet, like, remember from the Flintstones with the bowling ball falling on the poor guy's head, and looking for a fiber transmitter. And they'll take the used one back to the shop and try to save it and give it to somebody else, apparently. So a lot of different systems out there.
Necessarily new old stuff.
Yeah, so I mean, who knows what's gonna happen? And yeah, I guess now with our dwindling capital funds, I would like to not have to deal with this right now. So, but I think we've always, since TCTV started in 2007, we've always said, even before that, when we started collecting capital monies from the cable company, you ought to have 60,000 in reserve. You never know when you're going to need a new TV station. And insurance may only cover so much. So I think it's just good practice anyways. And again, I didn't know if I needed to fill out a form for that, but better safe than sorry. And no, if there's no questions about that.
Questions or comments? Okay.
And the last one again is something I wasn't sure. It needs a form. The cable plant is, I'm speaking in cable speak. The cable company refers to the wires as their plant. That's their plant. So to extend cable to 4 residences that we know of that do not have cable passing them on the street, we did get a quote from the cable operator. It's $23,000. I put this in for 25, figure an overage, but I am not in favor of paying this out of our capital. We've never paid that out of our capital to help.
Steve,
Yeah.
can I just ask you a question? Can I ask which street this is on? Is this
It's
on
yours.
Green Lake Road? Okay, so I
Three of
would,
them are on
yeah.
your street.
yeah, I was gonna say, just for the sake of transparency, because I know this is not just my house, but actually my aunt's house as well. I think it'd be best if I announced that I had a conflict of interest with this item, and if somebody else wanted to preside over him just presenting on this, because I didn't expect that you were gonna bring this up, but since it's on here, I just want to make sure that everyone's aware of that.
Certainly.
Is everyone okay with that? Okay, I'm gonna recuse myself right now, and just sit in the audience. Anybody?
I
wants to-
understand and respect that.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I was just saying, there are 4 residences that we know of that do not have cable passing on the road. And we've never paid for it out of our capital. I'm not in favor of paying for it out of our capital account. However, I was going to put in an offer request for it as soon as we got the quote, which took about 2 years. And however, the town administrator recommended that we put in an offer request for 200,000 for operational. I'm not opposed personally to paying it out of that ARPA fund if we get it. But I also would like the cable committee's input on it. And I think perhaps they should make the decision. If we do that, because we haven't done it before. And who knows if there are other residences out there. We did take a social media poll a couple years ago and nothing else turned up.
Just a comment and a question. When the town switched vendors from the old AT&T system to the Comcast. It's mind boggling. You bring a system into the community, you contract for that, but we don't provide a service drop to every residence. It's like saying, I'm gonna put light poles in, but I'm not gonna run wiring to your house. It's the same thing.
I've had that conversation with them and say, why you're going to, the cost of you running this line to this house is going to pay itself off in a couple of years with internet bills, and they just, they are either stuck in their ways or they just don't want to do it. I will say this, when we started on the cable committee back in 2003, our first mandate from the selectmen was to get Royalston Road wired. And we did that by getting 40 signatures out of 50 residences. We had to show 80% in a petition, and we made Comcast do it. So that was 50 residences right there. And they recently, in 2009, there was at least 12 to 20 on, is it Old Winchendon Road that runs up to from Otter River to Smith's Country Cheese? There was a good chunk of that wasn't done, and I think a house was built and it put them over the density limit. And Comcast, without being asked, well, even though I bugged them for a decade, but they ended up wiring that. So we're down to 4 houses that I know of. And again, I'm not in favor of paying it out of our capital. I don't think we have that, and I think it sets a bad precedent if there are others that we have missed. However, like I said, if we do get some ARPA money, I'm not opposed to using some of it there, and I think the cable committee should definitely weigh in on it. But I figured I'd fill out the form.
Yes. I think they would Comcast would come in and hire the whole town.
Anyone have any last comments, or see if you don't have anything else, right?
Nope.
No. Okay, does anyone have any last comments or questions overall, or?
Nope.
Okay, well, thank you, Steve.
You're welcome. Thank you all.
Thanks, Steve. With that, those are our department head reviews for tonight. Next on our agenda is, an update on the FY 2024 recommendations. Holly, I believe you wanted to speak with us.
Yeah, I was discussing with Adam some of the things that were on the list last year and wanted to update the committee on the recommendations that had been voted and what's been done with them. We have, the DPW 7-ton 6-wheel plow and dump. Ford 750. That's gonna be presented to the board on 10/25 to the select board. So that is in process. The HVAC at the police station, I think you all knew that that was out to bid again, that a contract was awarded, and we do have the contract signed, and that's in process. Probably gonna start work in February once they get all their equipment in. I guess equipment's on hold, just like everything else. The tanker one for the fire department, we have the lease in place and signed and ready to go. And the fire truck, I think Chief Bennett and Chief Dickey said it was up to 2 years out still, that they would actually get it. It's such a delayed response. DPW Buildings and Grounds Truck 550 swap loader. That was 180,268. That has been purchased. Software, work orders and asset management, that was the cemetery software. That's been purchased and put in place, and I believe they're almost ready to put that live on the website pretty soon. The water reel device for irrigation for the rec, and that's been put in place. That was $12,239. The DPW BNG mower 0-turn Kawasaki, 16,060. That's been purchased and I believe is been in use. And the electric panels at the town hall for 6,930 have been completed as well. There are several other items that will just have to move up. The forestry truck 2, skid steer loader, kitchen upgrade at the senior center that was put in by DPW. And paving at the Templeton Center Fire Station, Baldwin Fire Station, and Town Hall, and DPW. And the new fire station professional study, we'll have to decide on that, if it's gonna stay on the list. And upgrades to the town common for 30,000, so those have not been paid for or completed, and they're gonna have to just move up on the list. Does that make sense? I explained that right?
I believe so. Does anyone have anything? Any observations on it or anything we want to discuss or?
I just noted some of those completions and being presented, there's a bit of a delta in there. Many went up, one came down almost by 50%, but I was just making side notes here real fast.
Anything else? No. No. Okay. Well, thank you, Holly. So next up for discussion and possible action, reviewing the capital bylaw, chapter 9-7. This was something that was brought up by our treasurer collector to add to section A for the members of the committee to add that the town treasurer collector or designee shall be on the committee. I'll open the floor to Cheryl. I don't know if there's anything that she wants to comment on.
No, I just think if at any time that I, can't do this or whatever, I shall be able to select somebody that could. I think most things are set up that way, so I think we go along with the rest of them and have the option.
Anyone have any things that they want to discuss on this?
Seems straightforward to me. It does seem straightforward. I just have one comment. There's always a dollar amount has to be attached when we change a bylaw. We pay a fee to have these codified. And then we make a change, and then that's got to also be reviewed and codified once again. So we just need to keep in mind there is a dollar sign that has to be connected to this.
Really noted, Mr. Till. I'll just say that I Does anybody else have any other comments?
I understand the intent. I just,
Right.
full transparency,
Right.
we need to discuss this.
Right, no, I'll make a comment first on that, and then I'll make my original comment. We have revisited this bylaw a few times, so I do understand why you're bringing that up. We've been to town meeting a few times, not on this particular section, but on other sections
Right.
relative to chapter 9-7.
And it's not just this group.
Right, right. Sure. I was just gonna comment similar to what everyone else has said, is that I do think that this is it makes sense. The only other officer of the town that's on here in an ex officio status also has, or a designee shall be selected for their membership status. All of the other ones come from the selection of members at large, or one from the advisory committee is selected from them, or one from the selectmen is selected by them. So I don't see any issue, and it's the same with our other town officer that we have in here. That's my only comments on it. Does anyone else have any other input?
I do have one question.
Yes.
Is there any dollar amount? Is this what they call a de minimis amount, under, say, $50 or?
No, if I'm not mistaken, the last time we brought this to town meeting floor, it was like a $10,000 fee for ratification. That is the number that's resonating in my mind. I cannot tell you what day that meeting transpired. That's why I'm just throwing it out there. We need to think about this.
Are you talking about codification for the
Of the
entire,
town bylaws.
of the entire town bylaws, correct?
But you make a change to a bylaw, you
You have
now
to update
affect
the
it.
system.
Yes, you do.
So this is not a de minimis.
I don't believe it to be. I could be mistaken, but I don't believe it to be.
that'd be a good question for, I'm just thinking about it for the town clerk, because she's the one that submits that for the system. I don't know what each change does. For now, I don't know, what the interest is in the committee, if we want to, because that's a good question for before it approaches town meeting. If we are so inclined, if we want to make this recommended change and then have that investigated, by the selectmen for town meeting. Or how do we want to proceed with today's discussion?
I just am very surprised at what appears to be minor change in the wording could potentially be more than a de minimis amount of dollars. Maybe the best way to craft or structure a motion is to vote in favor of it, and subject to review by town administrator, select board.
Right, my understanding is that this would have to be reviewed by the selectman and the town administrator anyway before it hit town meeting board, if we did recommend anything. But no, that's a good point, I mean,
It's certainly within the wheelhouse of this committee to make its decision to move forward or not. That's part of the charge of the committee.
Well, I would be prepared to make a motion that we, make this change. Subject to review by the select board and town administrator.
are you making that motion, Mr. Francis?
I would make that as a motion.
Okay,
I would enter a second, but I would change that language slightly, that we run it through the town clerk first. Give her first pass, because she's the one who prepares what gets sent forward to the state if and when we have to cut it.
That sounds like a reasonable.
okay, are you gonna amend that, Mr.
I
Francis?
would have been the motion.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, we will go to the vote. Mr. Toth,
Yes.
Mr. Francis,
Yes.
Ms. Richardson,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes as well. That passed unanimously, 4-0. All right. And with that, we are at the end of our meeting. Is there anything anyone wants to see on the next meeting, or are we good? Final comments? Nothing, okay. Oh. Yes, Steve.
Is your next meeting the number 7? Or,
Yes.
Yes,
and you've got, a pretty stacked agenda, I believe,
It's not too bad, but we know we have that cut off by 6.
okay. I just wanted to-
Yeah. okay. We'll keep that in mind. Thank you, Steve. All right, anything else? No? Okay, hearing nothing else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. All right, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, all right, motion's been moved and seconded. We'll go for the vote on the motion to adjourn. Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. Francis?
Yes.
Ms. Richardson?
Yeah.
And I vote yes as well. That passed at, what time is that?